This is a question about translation more generally. How is it complicated by climatic conditions? For example, in a place like Miami, where there's not so much of a change in seasons.
That's right. Fortunately, I come from Philadelphia, so I know the and I used to teach at Penn State, but I don't admit that anymore. But this gentleman, your colleague, went to Penn State, so let's string him up. I'm teasing. These guys are going to join us on the roundtable later, so these are some grad students we're very proud of. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's, I don't know if anybody else wants to comment on that, because other people have done more translating than I have, but to what extent, you know, we've had the team of the Japanese translator and the American translator working together. To what extent does the personal know-how and experience, you know, affect things, or maybe, you know, maybe not? Would you?
About the season?
Well, or about just your, the seasons, or, yeah.
Well, when I lived in California, there's no season. So it was really difficult for me to explain Dogen's poetry.
Okay.
Especially that one.
Okay.
It's really difficult.
Really?
And that was one of the reasons I chose to move to Midwest.
Oh, yeah. So I better go back up north, I guess.
Thank you, Stephen and Shotai, for arranging this wonderful gathering and opportunity. When Stephen first talked about my talking here, we talked about Eikoroku, or Dogen's extensive record, as a topic, and I'm not going to talk about that, but I want to say a little bit. I want to talk about, instead, about an essay in Shobogenzo, but I'll just say, it's already been mentioned, so I don't need to say so much, but Dogen's extensive record is the other major, massive work of Dogen's besides Shobogenzo, and Stephen was talking about, other people were talking about Dogen's sense of humor, even though the little Jodo or Dharma Hall discourses in Eikoroku, most of what Eikoroku is, are very formal. In some ways, you get to see Dogen's personality and his sense of humor and his warmth and his own teaching style more. These were very short, usually very, very short talks given to the monks. So anyway, it was a privilege to work with Shohaku Okumura on that, and I'm glad it's out there now. And maybe I'll say a little more about it or give some excerpts from it in the roundtable. But what I want to talk about now is one of the essays in Shobogenzo that I think is quite revealing about Dogen's approach to practice, and but it has not gotten as much attention as I think it deserves. Of course, there are many, you know, there are in the largest version 95 essays, sometimes considered part of Shobogenzo. But anyway, I want to talk about Gyobutsu Igi, is the Japanese name. This is a Shobogenzo essay that I translated with Kaz Tanahashi, and it's in his complete Shobogenzo analysis, originally in his little book Beyond Thinking. And we translated the title, Gyobutsu Igi, as the awesome presence of active Buddhas. But I want to talk about the title a little bit and talk about some of the basic teachings in there. It's a long essay and I'm not going to get to all of it. But I think it has a lot, it reveals a lot about Dogen's approach and attitude towards practice. So first of all, Gyobutsu could be translated as active Buddhas or practicing Buddhas. It's the Gyo from Shugyo, which means to practice. And it also has some relationship to the Lotus Sutra story that Griff mentioned about the Buddha, because the bodhisattvas who came from under the ground and that inspired Buddha's revelation of his long lifespan were all had the leaders all had names that involved Gyo, or conduct, or active. Anyway, Dogen, in the beginning of the essay, talks about how these Gyobutsu, or active Buddhas, practicing Buddhas, and you could say actual Buddhas, are not one of the other categories of Buddhas. They're not one of the three bodies of Buddha. They're not Buddhas who acquire enlightenment. They're not Buddhas who have innate enlightenment. He goes on to different kinds of Buddhas. He says they're actual, active, practicing Buddhas. And he ends up saying at some point that all Buddhas are actually active practicing Buddhas. So this essay is talking about Buddhas not as some theoretical cosmic being, but as what is the actuality of Buddhas. And then the other part of the title, Igi, we translated it as awesome presence, and Kaz sometimes translates things a little flamboyantly, which I appreciate a lot. And Igi does mean awesome presence, but more commonly it would be translated as dignified manner. It has to do with the kind of dignity and presence and the inner dignity of these active Buddhas. And actually there's a story about, I think Tetsugikai was mentioned earlier, one of Dogen's, was referred to, one of Dogen's disciples who was told that he wasn't ready to receive transmission because he didn't have enough grandmotherly mind. Later on, he told his teacher, Koen Ejo, who had also studied with Dogen, that finally he accepted what Dogen had said, that dignified manner is the Buddha nature, is the Buddha Dharma. Now, for Westerners who maybe think of monastic regulations and so forth as restrictions and rules and, very, maybe very anal or something, that to see this dignified presence as the actuality of these active Buddhas is part of the point of this title. So there's this upright awareness and expression of active Buddhas. So I'm going to refer to the chapter in my new book, Zen Questions, where I talk about this essay. One of the first things that Dogen says in this essay is, know that Buddhas in the Buddha way do not wait for awakening. So again, this is not about, awakening is not something that will happen eventually later on if you do enough practice or if you have enough faith, or, Buddhas don't wait for awakening. It's not, so for Dogen, this Zazen, this Shikantaku, is not some method to reach some altered state in the future, or some technique to get to somewhere else. So this points to, as I see it, the expressive side of what Buddhas are and what Buddhas do. But they don't wait for awakening. They express this awakening right now. Of course, there is, as I think Griff was saying, there is awakening and those who aren't awakened, but the point isn't that you get some awakening in the future. And then there's this sentence right after that is maybe one of my favorite sentences in all of Dogen. And there are other famous sentences like, to study the way is to study the self in Genjo Koan. But this one is right up there for me. He says, active Buddhas alone, or you could translate it as active Buddhas simply, fully experience the vital process on the path of going beyond Buddha. So this is a kind of meaty statement that I recommend to my students to memorize and chew on. To fully experience the vital process on the path of going beyond Buddha. Again, it's not about reaching some state of mind or state of being called Buddha. It's about this vital process. It points to a kind of organic, chemical, vital process that is happening in the process of Zazen and life based on Zazen. We sit in the cauldron of the forms and structures and guideposts of the Buddhas and ancestors going back 2,500 years, and actually much more, but just surrendering to this organic path, allowing the dynamic active Buddha to take form, is this vital process. So that it points to this quality of Zazen that's not yet, he says elsewhere in Fukan Zazengi, it's not learning meditation, it's not some meditation technique, although practically speaking, in the context of doing this practice, studying and learning and taking on some of the old Buddhist meditation technology may be helpful in settling, but the point isn't to master some spiritual exercise. It's to give yourself to this vital process and to the path. And what is it the path of? It's the path of going beyond Buddha. So when we were translating Heikoroku, one of the phrases that Dogen uses very often, much more than Shikataza, I think, is going beyond and going beyond Buddha. So this is a little bit like Linji Rinzai saying, if you meet the Buddha, kill the Buddha. A little gentler way of saying it. Going beyond Buddha is a common phrase in Dogen's writings indicating the ongoing nature of awakening and of the active or practicing Buddha's conduct. For Dogen, Buddhahood is not some one-time attainment to be cherished thereafter, but an ongoing vital process requiring continued reawakening. The historical Shakyamuni Buddha and all the other many Buddhas do not stop practicing, and they do not stop awakening. The only real Buddha is a Buddha going beyond Buddha, this ongoing sustainable renewal resource of Buddha. So this idea of going beyond Buddha, if someone has some deep experience of Buddha, whatever that means, if someone has some good understanding, it's possible to have understandings of all of this. As Griff was saying, koans are not nonsense. There's a logic of awakening that they express. But what Dogen is saying here is to find this vital process on the path of going beyond Buddha, of not sticking to, if you have some experience or understanding of Buddha, it's not enough to make a picture of it, put it up on the wall, and bow down to it. How do you continually, ongoingly reawaken? So I would say the Buddha had his great awakening experience, and yet he continued for 4 decades afterwards, teaching and awakening. So this going beyond Buddha, I could almost see going beyond as a kind of definition of Buddha. Buddha is the one who is going beyond. This is this flavor that this particular essay really points to of this kind of active, lively, dynamic practice of actual Buddhas that's not caught in one particular understanding or experience of what Buddha is. That in each new situation, there is the possibility of awakening, there is the path, there is this vital, I would say, alchemical process that Dogen Zazen is about. What is this going beyond Buddha? What does it mean to fully experience the vital process on the path of going beyond Buddha? Dogen, you might translate that and push together a vital process and path, but really he uses all these words to kind of get at the texture of something. And soon after that he says, in this essay, because active Buddhas manifest awesome presence in every situation, they bring forth awesome presence with their body. It's not something theoretical. Thus their transformative function, he continues, flows out in their speech, reaching throughout time, space, Buddhas, and activities.